Hi, friends. Welcome again to another episode of Beyond the Clouds Edge to Edge Transformation. And as we've discussed before, this transformation is global. Every individual is involved. So it is a good idea for us to be aware and to participate. Technology leaders are very much involved in creating and supporting technologies. But there's a third element, the government and the policies that the governments have. So this triad of the individual, the government, and the policies have to work together so that we can do something that is meaningful, so that it's useful, and so that we have a say in it. And with us today is Amit Elazari. Amit, I know her from the Intel days, amazing person, very articulate, has been on many sides of it. Let's hear her story. Amit, tell us about your journey. How did you become the Amit Elazari we know today?
Thank you so much. And it's such a pleasure to be here today with you and your audience. So I'm going to go ahead and say it. The accent you're hearing is Israeli, born and raised in sunny Tel Aviv, and spent a few years in the Israeli intelligence forces in 8200, which is the same unit that produces a lot of the cyber entrepreneurs that we work with. Then spent a few years working on technology. I actually started in technology. I learned Prolog and coding. Again, when I was working in solar energy, I got exposed to patented technologies. And I was fascinated between that combination from thinking about how technology and law can work together. I fell in love in the law. So I went and did what every good lawyer does, started with degrees, kind of overdid it. Overall, 4, first degree in business, 3 degree in the law. I still teach from time to time in UC Berkeley, in the School of Information, and in university in Israel. Throughout my journey, that connection between technology and innovation and law and policy sparked my interest to see where we have more opportunities in this domain. After doing my degrees, I went and became a VC and M&A lawyer. So I practiced law actually in Israel, in the largest firm in Israel, Goldfarb Gross, and I did some acquisitions, AWS acquisition of Annapurna, among others, and worked with entrepreneurs. And then I discovered what many of already, that as much as I love the law, being a lawyer, I'm not sure. But same documents, same contracts, I wanted to do something else. There was an opportunity to go to Berkeley and really double down on my technology law expertise. So I went to Berkeley, went to do my PhD in the law, what's called the J.S.D. Was very fortunate, first and only Israeli, to got accepted to a direct track program. And this is where my life really changed. I was able to work with some of the best professors in the world on this area, what we call policy, which is more about working with governments and academia and industry on the next wave of regulations and policies, and really take into account how technology is impacting society and what that means in terms of which policy directions we need to go, which regulations, how we need to think about standards. Fun fact, my company is in the business of coalition building, and you will hear a little bit about it. But my first coalition started when I was at Berkeley, and it was a coalition of hackers, good faith hackers, bug hunters that wanted to work with companies and government and provide information about vulnerabilities so we are all better protected. And we're concerned about the legal ramifications. That project, together with many others, ended up to be very successful. It's called Disclose.io, kind of my first coalition nonprofit. Together, we created a one-form contract to better address some of the concerns in anti-hacking laws, in bug bounties and vulnerability disclosure programs. It's adopted today by thousands of organizations, from the Pentagon to Tesla. And ultimately, as part of that journey of really connecting security leaders, technical experts, and good hackers and companies and organizations and thinking about policy, I got headhunted by Intel. And I spent the last 4.5 years before open policy at Intel, ultimately as the head of cyber policy, which means that I ran all of our government relationships, engagement of cybersecurity, working directly with our CISO, with our CTO. And I was very fortunate to be working with the amazing team at Intel. I also chaired the policy committee for an institution called ITI, which is the leading trade association for technology, representing 80 of the largest tech companies in the world for cyber policy. I was amazed by the power of this profession. I was amazed by how much technology leaders and executives wanted to know what's coming from policy. They understood that the direction we're seeing from policymakers and government ultimately will impact the roadmap. If you think about security, how much of the security spend is tied to compliance? Well, we know from Gartner, it's about 50 to 80%, depending on where you're at. So ultimately, CISOs, CPOs, they spend on desired outcomes that regulations require them to achieve in their organization, security standards, requirements, and regulation. What's coming, and you can anticipate it. You can have better go-to-market motions. You can have better marketing collateral. You can have better features. What was amazing to me is that all of that knowledge was sitting within government affairs. It's like something that the 1%, the large tech companies have. I would talk with so many investors and unicorns, entrepreneurs, and they do not have access to that information. So from that vision came open policy. Most of this profession is text. So we use generative AI architecture and other architecture to automate a lot of what the policy persona a professional like me would do, and bring all those sources together, but connect it really to business technology strategy, and also scale the ability of organizations of all sizes to come together and influence. We like to think about ourselves as the one end-to-end government affairs value unlocking platform for organizations of all sizes, but we really focus on those growth unicorn stage that today don't feel they have a seat at the table, but have the budget to spend on a capability like this.
Such an amazing story that you focused on what really you're passionate about, and it shows. What are the challenges that individuals or small organizations have in getting that seat at the table? Why is it that individuals or even Disclose.io, what are the challenges they had in being able to talk to government people or influencing policy when their intention was to actually help in cybersecurity?
That's a great question. I just look at cybersecurity as a use case, but it's across the board. You see it in AI, in space, in telecom, fintech, Web3. There are many domains in which policy is extremely impactful for VCs and startups. Crypto is another example, blockchain. The challenge starts with the fact that there is a very small subset of professionals in this space. We're not lobbyists and we're not lawyers. We are experts in executing a policy strategy in a particular domain. So I would say at the top level, you might have 200 to 300 people doing this for each portfolio. So AI, privacy, cyber, etc. Those policy strategists usually learn the profession in big companies, in big telecom, big technology, big tech. Sometimes they come from government. It requires very unique expertise. It's not about just knowing how to influence and who to influence and how to write it and how to build a coalition and which documents to prioritize and how to do that globally. It's almost like chess. There are so many moving pieces you need to move together. You also need to be able to do it in a way that is faithful and is advancing your business strategy and technology roadmap, which is constantly changing. It is a skill set that we have never really scaled. It's almost like this art. It's people's heads, amazing people. But these people are not focusing right now on helping startups. Naturally, they work in other places. So we have a very small amount of workforce. There is a last mile component to policy, which is influence, which requires personal relationships. So that's the lobbying part, and that's working with government. And then there is just like the amount of things happening. Let's talk about AI. Let's put this in context. So we had an amazing executive order on AI. We were very fortunate to be named on the White House page with our ecosystem partners, companies like Hidden Layer and others that work with us. Now there are taskings under the EO, about 50 of them. These are documents. You need to work with government and submit filings and be engaged and constantly thinking on how the right comment is faithful to what you're doing and is progressing not just your company and your business, but the ecosystem at large. And it's solving a problem that the government wants to solve. That's just one document from the US government. Europe, EUA Act, UK, with their AI safety initiatives, all these moving pieces coming together. So for one company to drive impact, not only do they have to have the scale of a government affairs machine like big tech, they also need to deal with this complexity. And at the core of open policy is the proposition that that is not effective. Most of the work we need to do on policy can be done in a coalition fashion. It reduces costs. It's better for society. It allows us to align with partners. And by the way, through this partnership, many of our companies that work with open policy find new technology integrations Business relationships are being formed just because they come together to do the policy work collectively. And then there is the piece of just automation. A lot of the day-to-day work, the intelligence gathering, the connection between what's coming to your technology roadmap, the work of the policy manager, the work of the coalition building, there are elements of it that can be scaled with automation. Not everything, and we are a tech-enabled service company, which means that we believe that the human here is very essential, and there is always going to be the expertise of the human. But a little bit like in security, we think that the combination of the art, the human element, having the best sources of intelligence, and crowdsourcing and automation, that's kind of the combination that allows us to scale this amazing value add to organizations of all sizes. This is a little bit of the challenges, but also like a path towards resolution. And I will just say, why is it important? We are in a junction right now as a society. We have new technology paradigms that are being introduced, like AI. And at the core of everything is government. In Grovian strategy terms, we are both Intel people, this is a 10x force, which means the government and geopolitical powers regulation apply to the market in a way that is exponentially impactful. It moves all the different pieces, moves where companies can even work. They have go-to-market access. If we continue to be in this situation where most of the market is not talking with government, this is a threat to national security. We have to have a better connection between innovators, between innovation, and policymakers.
Yes, indeed. In fact, I had the pleasure of working at Sun Microsystems and working with the policymakers. During the dot-com days, there were embargoes from the United States against Iran, and then 9/11 happened and the Iraq war. So it was a very complex situation. What I noticed at that time was the language spoken by technologists is vastly different, the geek speak, from the business speaker, which is again very different from the language of the lawyers. Government policymakers, they have their own vantage point on what they want to do. How do you recommend people come together to influence policy to create such a coalition?
The foundational piece of it, and we are seeing it now, we work with a lot of venture capital firms. We have a market education issue. The 1% understands that government relationship matters, but they're still struggling to put the value, like the number. We know how the CHIPS Act was so important, not just for the US government, but for Intel. There is an understanding government affairs matter, but only 1% of the market spends on government affairs. We believe that spend on government affairs is the next go-to-market marketing business development spend, in about 20% of the lower, like you take 1%, you go down, growth and unicorns. And this is the first step of market education. If people really care about solving this problem, they need to open up a budget for this type of engagement and understand that these insights and engagement is a tool for them, perhaps the most powerful tool to increase their TAM. So the first step is market education, that there is value in policy. The way we try to approach it is not just the traditional way of meetings with the government, but really creating a platform that allows you to take that huge amount of information on what's coming and connect it to your business roadmap. So make it very actionable. You don't need to have a policy in-house expert to work with us at Open Policy. And we do it in a way that scales because we do it with coalitions. This is the first step in getting more awareness, education to the market. We do see already that there is an understanding among the investment committee, among growth companies, that engaging with policy and seeing what's coming and working with government is critical. But we want to see more of that. We want to have that leap, understanding that this is a piece of business development that is essential. Actually, in the C-suite, we do have that understanding once something happens. Once you find yourself in a situation where some entity list or some development has closed an entire jurisdiction and market, you kind of think in retrospect, oh, I should have known that it's coming, and kind of better design or better plan. We need executives, we need entrepreneurs, and we need the strategic functions in the company to seize this moment and understand there are vehicles to see what's coming and take action.
Recently, I had the opportunity to talk to Love Varshney. He was a part of the team that created President Biden's executive order. And I know they have amazing people there, good intentioned people who are trying to balance out innovation versus regulation so that we can get to that sweet spot. One of the things that I've noticed, especially among young companies, they're very allergic to regulation and therefore they're very reactive. They'll say, let's just do something and then ask for forgiveness. Or they don't see it as an opportunity. They don't see that policy can be actionable. You must have met all kinds of people. What have you seen in your work?
It's an area where people's perceptions about government or regulations are playing a role, but ultimately you see where the market is going. Open up Gartner. If you're in security, top concern of CISOs is regulatory changes. These are the CISOs of the organization. Top concern of the privacy professionals is what's going to come from AI regulatory changes in terms of their ability to leverage generative AI within the organization. So we need to look at policy and regulations and government from a business perspective, in as much as we look at any other discipline. Like in technology, we study what's coming. We take a disciplined approach. There is overwhelming evidence that policy decision-making is going to be impacting your business, period. And taking a reactive approach to it is, honestly, it's a little bit like designing a technology without making sure you're well aware of which code changes or what technology paradigms are coming. Ultimately, you can be spending today years, a lot of hundreds of millions on a technology that might become completely obsolete because of a regulatory barrier in China or in Europe. Or you can make small investment in terms of relative to the budget in staying ahead of the curve, being able to influence it, to make sure that not only are you delivering the products that your customers are going to be using and you are informing them, you're helping your customers to be better aware as to what's coming, but actually delivering something that is helpful for society. Governments are very excited about what we're doing because they see an opportunity in being able to educate the part of innovation that is developing the product ahead of the curve. If you think about it, today, a lot of the interaction between government and industry is happening in companies that are very well established, but are also not cutting edge. They're amazing companies, but a lot of the innovation is coming from startups. So if we connect better startups with government, not only can we help those startups to make sure that they are developing roadmaps that are actionable, that are going to be a market fit, that they can seize that moment to better sell, but also we are delivering for society, finally, a fit between supply and demand, supply of innovative solutions and demand in terms of what's coming from regulatory requirements. Today, we have a mismatch in the timing because the information doesn't flow to the supply portion. So what we are trying to build is an ecosystem where the supply side is better informed so we can avoid that 2 to 3 year gap that we often have between requirements and solutions.
So Amit, you said something very interesting. Your platform at Open Policy also uses Gen AI. Are some of these regulatory requirements also applied to Open Policy itself and the platform itself?
Well, we are in early stages of development. Part of our excitement and why we want to be ourselves part of the conversation is we recognize that we use AI ourselves. Luckily, a lot of the information we deal with is public, so it's not that sensitive. Of course, this is another reason for Open Policy to take part in this conversation. It is fascinating to be a tech company in the policy space, also working with other companies. We are very fortunate because in our own ecosystem, we have some of the best AI security companies in the world. As we grow and work collaboratively, we are very excited about what we're building. We're not just a services consultancy. We are a platform, and we don't think that the solution for this very problematic situation between innovation and government, a very thin layer that can service a very small amount of people, and we don't think that the solution would come only from more people. We need a much more powerful tool that can bring everything together, a little bit like open source.
One of the public perception about policy is all you need is soft skills. And soft skills are essential when it deals with policymakers. So there's the legal, there's soft skills on how you influence, and then there's the data, what's happening and what's likely to happen. The kind of platforms you're creating, how do you see it helping in developing all these skills?
That's a really great question. So first of all, there is a lot in this profession that is about intelligence gathering, and the intelligence is text. There is a lot in this profession that is about connecting the mountains of text to very concrete domains. So we operate in that space. There is a lot of comments and filings work. Then there are opportunities there. There is a lot of just connecting policy to your own organization. So let's see what's coming. Let's see what it means for marketing material, what it means for my CTO and CPO that are thinking about product direction. All of that cannot be scaled if in between there is just a human talking in a meeting. There has to be a platform for information dissemination. So that's one thing we're working on. In terms of soft skills, we are doing two things. By trying to bring this value proposition to companies that have never spent on government affairs, we're increasing the collective TAM, which ultimately means that our goal is to bring a lot more professionals into my field, and honestly, more diverse professionals as well. I'm probably one of the only immigrants that was at that level of large tech company, US-based, big portfolio management, and we need to fix that. That means we need to put more money into this and make it more scalable for everyone to enjoy the services of policy. This is where solutions like crowdsourcing have worked before. Hacking, what a great example. Before we had bug bounty platforms, it wasn't as easy to connect hackers with their very unique skill set at the 1% with everyone else. So this crowdsourcing element, the tech-enabled service, we really believe in it. And ultimately, the third element is just scale. Influence, it's not just about the right connections and the right message. It's also knowing how and where and how to prioritize. And it's just about coalitions. One-on-one is not very effective with government. Government is supposed to be serving the public interest. The most important advocacy work being done today, it's done in coalitions. And there is a reason for that. Ultimately, a policy needs to advance a collective goal. So we really believe in the power of coalitions. This is like how you build a consensus behind your point of view. We just take a slightly different approach, which is a very focused coalition, one that can work together with the tremendous coalitions we have already operating, like the US Chamber, Consumer Technology Association, ITI. There are many trade associations out there, and they're fantastic, but they're really geared on serving kind of the 1% and bringing their point of view. And we just try to work collaboratively with them to not just increase the amount of spend on policy to TAMs that they've never unlocked before, but also to bring that perspective to the table.
The amount of awareness when it comes to policy, how to work with it, is so low that my hardest time when I was at Sun 20 years ago was dealing with my own engineers, making sure that we follow the policies and they help us in formulating the policy. So what advice do you have for people who are new to the profession or interested in either public policy or in cybersecurity, or in the sweet spot where both come together? How should somebody get into these things, or how should they get educated about these things?
So first of all, people are free to reach out to us through our website or LinkedIn and talk with us. We're very focused on AI and cybersecurity and privacy now. Do reach out. My advice is simple. Follow your passion. If you have an opportunity to drive impact, if you love this space, there is a room for you in this domain. I'm working as hard as I can to make it more accessible for people to come in. Frankly, my path to policy was very untraditional, and I had to graduate 4 degrees summa cum laude to get here. And it shouldn't be that case. It should be a lot more open. For that, we need people that are passionate. We need the support of venture capital firms, investors, entrepreneurs, and the executive chain, recognizing that there is a paradigm shift. This is not a decade ago. Policy is really important to everything you're doing as a business. If you have a piece of AI in your infrastructure, you should be thinking about the executive order on AI and what it means. So we need them to support this spend. And then we will have an opportunity to pay for a lot more diverse, interdisciplinary, amazing talent to come into this domain, gradually learn the profession, and we will use technology as we are today to make sure that their time is well spent on things that matter, on strategy, on relationships, on those soft skills. Then we use technology to scale everything else to a much broader subset of companies and entities. I hear from investors, generative AI is making the impossible possible and the hard easier. I could not be more excited about the paradigm of using AI for what we view as one of the most noble causes out there. We are democratizing democracy, if you think about it for a second. We are going right at the core of the processes being used to develop policies, inform policies, engage policies, specifically on technologies, and we're making them more open and accessible to companies of all sizes. but we need your help. We need the spend, we need the passion, we need the people. Hopefully this message resonated with some of you, and please feel free to reach out. And I'm happy to talk more on how we can collaborate.
Thanks a lot, Amit, for giving us a glimpse of what the world of policy looks like and how it applies to emerging technologies. Right now, AI is in the vogue, but similar things will probably apply to AR, VR, and many, many things that are happening. And we've already known that in telecom, we've known that in healthcare. So thank you, Tadar Rabah, for introducing us. It's such an amazing delight. And to people out there, this is why I talk to a diverse group of people. We live in a very multidimensional world. We cannot be in a cave and we can't reap all the benefits of what's happening. We have to understand all the things that can affect our life. Instead of feeling like a victim, we have to participate in this democracy. Thank you for democratizing democracy, making it accessible to people. So please come forward, tell us about your concerns. If you have any of the things that affect you, what are the ways in which we can empower each other so that we can create a more harmonious world. Thanks again, and all power to you. You guys are doing something very wonderful.
Thank you for having me.